Greeting and salutations. I am Lloyd, a producer at LCD Productions, and I have come to share this new series of visual audiobooks with you, the listener, the supporter, the viewer. Together we will go on a journey like never before, fly to new heights with Project Aerospace, explore new land and cityscapes with photations, even change the dimension of time through the power of time-lapse photography from live to tape. We'll even travel beyond the mind's eye into worlds captured and generated through animation from Thumbs United daily animation series. As we together go on these journeys filled with photography and theater of the mind, I hope you remember the core belief that we hold, that anyone can become the master of art, meaning that it is not some born skill what makes someone good at being creative. It is a desire to practice and spend time being creative that creates the master. I hope that these films, photography, and stories inspire you to set some time aside and practice some creativity. I believe if we all spend more time creating and being constructive, the world would be a better place, a more friendlier and fulfilling place. Thank you for coming. Let's begin this journey. This is live to tape with a partnership with Project Aerospace to create this visual audiobook, The Girl Aviators and the Phantom Airship. Chapter 9, A Race Against Time. One evening, a week later, Peggy and her brother were tightening up some braces on the Golden Butterfly after an afternoon's flight along the coast when the sharp honk-honk of an automobile from the road attracted their attention. Running to the door, Peggy saw Jimsy and his sister in the Gee Whiz, as their red auto had been christened. But that there was something the matter with Gee Whiz was evident. The motor, ungeared, was coughing and sputtering in a painful manner. Jimsy shouted as he saw the two young Prescotts. "Say, you aviators, come here and see what you can do to doctor a poor, creeping earthworm of an auto." Laughing at his tone and words, Peggy and her brother hastened down the path and through the gate. "Something's wrong with the transmission," explained Jimsy. "What's the trouble?" asked Roy. "What a question, you goose," cried Jess. "If we knew, we would have fixed it long ago." "It's doubly annoying," said Jimsy in an impatient tone, "because we got a wire from Father tonight saying that he would take us on a trip to Washington with him if he arrived in New York by 8:30. "Oh, you poor dears," exclaimed Peggy. "And if you don't get there at that time?" "We can't go, that's all," said Jess, tragically grasping her gloved hands. Brother the luck," murmured Jimsy, the masculine grumpiness. Found out what the trouble, Roy?" "Yes," was the response. "One of your gears is stripped. I'm afraid that there will be no Washington trip for you folksies." The tears rose in Jess's fine eyes, and Jimsy looked across with an abrupt silence. It was Peggy who broke it with a suggestion. There's a train leaves Central Riverview Junction at 6, isn't there?" "I believe so," rejoined Jess in a doleful voice. "We took it one night, I remember, when we missed the through cars from Sandy Bay." "It's 5 now," nodded Peggy, examining the dial of the tiny watch, one of the last presents her father had given her. "Fat chance of getting this old hurdy-gurdy fixed up in that time to make it," grumbled Jimsy. "You don't have to," cried Peggy with a note of triumph. "Don't have to." It was Jess who echoed the remark. "No, indeed. Our aerial express will start for the juncture in a few minutes, but the rest was drowned by an enthusiastic shout. Jess threw her arms about her in a chum and fairly hugged her. "You darling, we can make it." "We must," with the businesslike rejoined Roy. "You get the Butterfly out and filled with the lubricator tank, and we've got enough gasoline." Roy and Jimsy, arm in arm, hastened off to the shed. The two girls followed more leisurely. It was not long before everything was readiness, but in fast as they worked, it was nearly half an hour before the preparations were all complete. Then they climbed in, and Peggy started the engine, but the next instant she shut it off again. The second cylinder is misfiring, she pronounced. Roy bent over the refractory part of the motor, and soon it was adjusted. Then the motor settled down to a steady tune, and regular humming throbs and delights the hearts of the aviators. "All ready?" inquired Peggy, adjusting her hood and goggles, and turned about. "All right," hailed Jimsy. "Now, boys and girls, prepare for a long run," warned Peggy. "With this load, it will take a long time to rise." The airplane was speeding up and soon traversed a slope leading from the back of the shed and summit of a little hill and rear of Prescott's place. As it topped the rise, Peggy turned on full power, and the Golden Butterfly dashed forward, and then, after what seemed a long interval, began to rise. Up it soared, its motor laboring bravely under its heavy burden. In the dusk, blue flames could be seen occasionally spurting out exhaust. It would have been a weird, perhaps a terrifying sight to anyone unused to it, the flight of this roaring, flaming sky monster through the evening gloom. "We've got half an hour to make the 20 miles, shouted Roy from his seat beside his sister. Peggy set her little white, even teeth and nodded. I was going to make the 4 tracks and follow them. That's the quickest way," she said. It seemed only a few seconds later that the red and green lights of the semaphore signal flashed up below them. "Bradley crossing," announced Roy, swinging the aeroplane about. Peggy began flying directly above the tracks. "No sign of the train yet. We may make it," said Gimpsy, pulling out his watch showing 5:45, and they had 15 minutes to travel, or so Roy estimated the distance. "Let her out for a mile a minute," he exclaimed. Peggy only nodded, for she was far too busy getting all the work she could out of the motor. "An extra passenger makes a lot of difference to an airplane," said, and the Butterfly was only built to accommodate 3, but she was answering gallantly to the strain. On she flew above the tracks, every now and then soaring above some astonished crossing keeper or track walker. Suddenly, somewhere behind them, they heard a long, moaning whistle. "The train!" shouted Jess. In her excitement, she gripped Roy's arm and tightly peered back. All at once, around a curve, the locomotive came into view, black smoke spouting from its funnel, and a column of white steam poured from its safety valves. "She'll beat us!" cried Jimsy despairingly, as the thunder and speed of the train grew louder. The setting sun flashed on the varnished sides of the car. The engineer thrust his head out the cabin window and gazed upward. His attention had been attracted by the roaring of the motor overhead. He broke into a yell and waved his hands as he saw the flying aeroplane dashing along above him. The next instant his hand sought the whistle cord. "Toot, toot!" The occupants of the airplane waved their hands. To the chagrin, however, they saw that the overloaded as the airplane was, the train was gaining on them in leaps and bounds. The windows were black with heads, and now passengers, regardless of the danger encountered, some track-side obstacle, leaned out and gazed up at the Golden Butterfly soaring over like some great thunder lizard of the dark ages. "Don't they stop anywhere between here and the junction?" gasped Jimsy. Roy shook his head. "It's a through train from Montauk," he said. "They make all the speed they can." 2 minutes, cried Jess suddenly. "We won't do it." But Peggy had suddenly swung off the tracks and was cutting across the county. She had seen that the tracks took a long curve just before it entered the junction. By taking a slightly crow flight across the country, she might beat it after all. And she did. As the train came thundering into the station and stopped with an almighty screeching of brakes and hissing of escaping steam, the aeroplane came to earth in a flat park-lined space in front of the depot. "Stumble out quick," shouted Roy. "She only stops a jiffy." Jess and Jimsy lost no time in obeying. Goodbye, you darlings," cried Jess as she sped after her brother toward the station. "We'll get our tickets on the train," shouted Jimsy as they vanished. "All aboard!" The conductor's voice ran prematurely out, and had seen the race between the airplane and the train, but even that could not disturb the conductor's desire to start on time. All the wheels began to revolve, Jimsy and Jess swung on the steps of the rear parlor car. As they did so, the passengers broke into an involuntary cheer and shouts of approval at the up-to-date manner in which the young folks had made their train, mingled with the puffing of the locomotive as it sped off. Among the spectators of the sensational feat had been a broad-shouldered, bronzed man in a sombrero hat who in the middle parlor car with Jimsy and Jess had entered. He looked like a Westerner. As the train gathered headway, he suddenly, after an interval of deep thought, struck one big brawny hand upon his knee and exclaimed to himself, "It's the very thing, the very thing. With a fleet of those, I could develop the Jupiter and astonish the mining world." He rose with the slowness and powerful man and made his way back to where Jimsy and Jess were sitting. Raising his broad-brimmed hat with an old-fashioned courtesy, he addressed himself to Jimsy and was soon deep in conversation with him. That was Chapter 9. Next chapter is Chapter 10, The Rival Airplane. Thank you for experiencing this journey we have created here at LCD Productions. For more information on how to support these films and projects, visit photations.com/support. Fine art photography prints from journeys around the world can be purchased from photationsstore.com, and digital downloads of our photography and visual audiobooks is available for personal use. Commercial use is available at a different rate. Thank you for your time. I hope to see you here again.